Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Martina.
Present.
Mayor Key.
Okay, declaration of conflict of interest. Being none. Items from the public, non-agenda items. If anyone has an item they'd like to bring before the council, non-agenda, now is the time to come before the council. There being none, next item would be the consent calendar.
I make a motion that we accept the consent calendar.
I second.
Okay, a motion is made and second that the consent calendar be accepted. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Next item, public hearings. First one is 9A, which is adoption, resolution number 2009, next number, a resolution declaring the existence of a public nuisance under ordinance number 95-8. Chief?
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. Before you, a resolution requesting the declaration of a public nuisance for 4 locations. You should have them in your packet in front of you. Each of them are for tall, unkept weeds and other issues with the locations. I think we have some photos here as well on the screen. The 2100 block of Great Falls, the 1400 block of R Street, 2000 block of Carlsbad Cavern, and the second one on Carlsbad Cavern as well. All 4 are unoccupied. We've exhausted all efforts to try to remedy the situation with the current owners, and we're asking for you to declare them a nuisance so we can abate the properties.
Thank you, Chief. Bring it back to the council for direction, please.
I move that we adopt Resolution 2009, next number, a resolution declaring that the existence of a public nuisance under ordinance number 95-4.
I'll second that.
Motion been made and second for the nuisance abatement. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm sorry.
Public hearing.
Oh, excuse me. New kid on the block. Is there anyone in the public would like to address this item? There being none, I'll bring it back to the council. And we had a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carried. Okay, we're going to regular business now. And under 10A, adopt.
We have 9B.
Oh, boy, I got a check mark behind that. Okay, I'm sorry, another public hearing. Approved general plan amendment number 09-01, conceptual approval of the housing element document for purpose of HCD review.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem and council members. As Mayor Pro Tem Martina stated, before you is General Plan Amendment 0901 for the update of the city's housing element. The housing element is one of the required 7 elements of the general plan, and unlike the rest of the general plan, must be updated every 5 years. This draft housing element was presented to the council on April 14th for comment. The document was also reviewed and conceptually approved by the Planning Commission. The city is required to have an updated housing element by August 31st of this year. The proposed housing element update includes all statutory requirements and allows the city to address all housing needs within the city. Upon completion and adoption of the updated housing element, staff will complete all necessary environmental reviews. Staff recommends conceptual approval of the draft housing element update for purposes of HCD review, and our consultant, Martin Carver, is here to answer any questions that the council may have.
Okay, council, any questions at this time?
I just have one complaint. The pictures that you have. Newman 2030 general plan housing element. Have you looked at the picture?
Yes.
I mean, they're terrible. I mean, if you were to look at this, you'd go, my God, I wouldn't move there on a bet.
That's behind the car wash. That's coming down.
Huh?
That's behind the car wash.
No, but I'm still saying, I mean, why don't you put some of the nicer looking, homes on there?
Those pictures were taken during the housing stock survey, and I think it was merely to show maybe the lesser quality. Martin, that's on you. You know what? I will get you a new picture.
That's all I ask. If you guys
Sure.
could put some nice pictures
I'll get you some
on.
pictures this week, Martin.
Yeah, like the Martini
Picture of my
house and
house.
those kind of places.
Okay.
So, thank you. No, I thought that and I started laughing. I
The
thought that
left
was
button?
funny.
that's your button to change the slides.
Mayor Pro Tem, our consultant Martin Carver will do a presentation for you to help you understand the housing element, what it's all about. We do have a couple new members on the council that have not gone through this process, and they'll explain how tedious it is.
Very good.
Thanks, Michael. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, members of the City Council. My name is Martin Carver. I'm with Coast Plans, and some of you I'm sure I've met before earlier this year, but also 5 years ago, because we did this housing element together back 5 years ago, 6 years ago, back in 2003. So we've been running this process since late last year, and so let me run you through the presentation I have here quickly. And what I have on the agenda tonight is to do a quick review of the schedule for the update, talk about available sites, review the new and revised housing programs, talk a little bit about Planning Commission recommendations, and then next steps. So with regard to schedules, you guys are able to see this okay? So again, in December, late last year, we sort of got going and got the meat of this done, including doing a housing conditions survey. And yes, those pictures are from the housing conditions. It was just expediency, I have to say. And we'll make sure that we get some new pictures on front.
Please.
In January and February, we conducted some public outreach. We held a stakeholders roundtable in January, I believe it was, and then followed it up that evening with a public workshop. I know Ted was at that workshop at least, maybe.
Yes, Bob was there.
Bob was there as well. So, and then since that time, we've been actually preparing the document and then getting it out for public review, including getting it to you guys. We've run it through the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission saw it in April, and then last Thursday actually took their action on it to recommend it to City Council. There were just a couple of minor changes, and I'll go over that stuff. Tonight, of course, we're looking for that conceptual approval so that we can send it off to HCD. They have a 60-day review once we send it off, and during that time, we'll be undertaking the environmental review that has to be done on it, the CEQA document. We'll get it back, we'll make any final changes. We don't really expect too many, but it is HCD, so you never quite know. And then we'll come back to you for a final formal adoption of the document. So, diving right into the overview of available sites, the important thing to understand is that times being as they are, and even before this crisis hit, Stan Cog and other councils of government were lowering the projections of growth throughout the state. So the numbers that StanCog has come up with, your regional housing needs allocation, is actually considerably lower than it was 5 years ago. That, combined with the fact that you guys have had lots of growth in the last period, means that there is essentially nothing that you guys have to do to make vacant sites available. There is one caveat to that, and I'll be talking about that. But the big picture is that you've got projects, you've got sites already that have been that are in the approval process, or in some cases already started construction since 2007, which is the beginning of this planning period. It runs 2007 through 2014. And so there really is essentially no rezonings or anything you have to do to meet the letter of the law for HCD. Now to that one caveat. In 2005, the state legislature passed AB 1233, and it essentially said that if an element failed to identify or implement adequate sites, the city must rezone to address this need within 1 year of the update. This essentially means that back in 2003, if you had a list of sites and there were a few of them that you said you were going to rezone to make available, and you needed to make them, you needed those sites to fill out the picture. If you didn't in the last 5 years actually do that, the state is now requiring you to go back and do it, regardless of what other vacant available sites you have. They just want you to go back and do what you said you were going to do. So there's actually 3 sites that fall into that category for Newman, and I've got them on a map, and we can talk about those a little bit. Here are the 3 sites. Let's see. this one down here on, it's Prince Street, right? I'm not gonna be able, and then these two parcels are actually right up together, adjacent what the high school is here, is that correct? Something like that. So those are the three sites. All of those are designated, I think, correctly in the general plan. It was just a matter of following through and doing the rezoning. So state law does require that this now happen within 1 year of certification of this element. So you'll have about a year to go through, and I think Michael probably has something to say about a comprehensive rezoning program that you guys will undertake later in the year, perhaps to address this, but we can get into those details later. Now moving on to the other sites, the sites that I've compiled to meet the needs this time around. I've divided them into 4 categories. Into lower income sites, that's your extremely low income categories. Your moderate income sites that require no action. And then I've got another category, moderate income sites that actions actually needed to bring them to actually make them available for medium density housing, either an annexation or perhaps some rezoning or something like that. But I need to stress that if you did nothing with these sites, you'd have sufficient sites in this first category to actually meet your need. So it's not like there's any really required action, it's just that these are sites that are out there that are obvious choices for doing that kind of housing. And then the last category is just your market rate sites. And I've got these on a map here. Those are the first 3, and then the 4 that I just talked about, the 4 lower income sites out here, which has already started to be built, right? Those are those townhomes, the villas, right, out there. You've got just a couple of very small sites in, here and here, and then out here, just adjacent again to the high school out there. Those are the 4 lower income sites that are already appropriately zoned, already appropriately general plan designated. They're there, they're available, and they're sufficient to make the need to make.
Excuse me, what street did you say site number 1 was on?
Site number 1, I thought it was Prince Street. I'm sorry, I can't
Inyo.
back up.
I mean Prince, yes, I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're
Prince.
back now.
Prince off of Inyo.
Martin, they went back.
Oh, it did, okay, great.
It's
Down here, Prince Street, right?
Yeah. Now, where, Mike, is that? Is that Sousa's property or?
That's probably immediately north of the senior apartment complex.
That lot
Yeah,
that
it'd be-
sits between?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's immediately, there's 2 vacant properties,
Right.
one with the barn on it, an animal.
Oh,
Yeah, that's immediately north of West Side Apartments.
There's a couple cows on
oh, that one, that right there, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Excuse
That has
me.
to be rezoned, huh?
Yes.
Okay.
So those are the 4 lower income sites. And then the moderate income sites that don't require any action. Another site down here on Prince Street, this site up here, and then 2 sites out here. And then the other moderate income, no, those were the other moderate income sites. Moderate income that don't require any action, and the others I haven't mapped. So, but I did put a table that just sort of summarizes it all. In all, I've identified 34 sites for about 218 acres with, almost 1,300 units of housing potential, the vast majority of that being market rate housing, of course. But all the numbers, I've put the adjusted regional housing needs allocation numbers here, and you can see that in every case you have sufficient capacity on those sites to meet those needs. Okay, trying to move this along. Now, in addition to all those sites that you have within the existing city boundary, of course, you have a newish general plan, I guess a couple years old. It can still be called new. A new general plan, one that's very well done. And so part of what we do for HCD is to let them know what the long term is for the city as well. And so here are those sites there with considerable capacity. I calculated 693 acres with about 3,300 units of capacity. And because of the policies that you adopted in the course of that general plan, there are policies that require a certain limit on the number of single-family houses. A certain amount of it has to be over a certain density, and of the single families, so many of those have to contain a second unit down here. So using those numbers, I then created a table that gives you a rough idea. I mean, it could play out in many ways, but a rough idea of the kind of capacity you have by income category in those new growth areas. And so for low density, you've got this here, here are your second units here, your medium density capacity here, and your high density here for a total of 693 acres. All right, so then moving on to the revised programs, the first thing you need to know is that I made just very minor changes to the actual policies. And I haven't actually enumerated any of those changes in my presentation. If you're interested, there is a red line, there's a markup version of the document that you have in your possession. But the housing programs, for the most part, I just deleted what was there and just started from scratch, which is pretty typical. We just start with a new set of programs. They respond to changes in state law, and they also pick up on some things that we talked about in that housing workshop that we did way back in January. Program 1, excuse me, this goes back to that business I was telling you about having to go back and rezone those sites that you said you were going to rezone in 2003. So this is just about taking those sites, 1, 2, and 3, and rezoning them as appropriate, and again, the time frame within 1 year. Programs 2 and 3 have to do with a new statute that has to do with providing information to service providers. So the city shall forward the housing element to public utilities providing gas, electricity, and telephone and cable services, and to the school district to ensure that public utilities and the like are made available to meet the expected growth in those areas where development is planned. Now, the kicker is that in addition to that, the city is now required to adopt an ordinance that establishes specific procedures to grant priority service to housing with units affordable to lower income households whenever capacity is limited. So if you're in a situation where you have limited sewer capacity and you have 2 projects and one of them have affordable housing and one of them don't, and you only have enough sewer capacity for one of the projects, this statute would say that you have to approve the one that has the affordable housing in it first. All right? All right, so there's always caveats. It's statute. I'm not a lawyer, but you get the general drift of where they're going with it. Program 6, moving on, there was previously something in the element that had to do with accessibility and the like, and the approach that's more likely taken these days is about universal design, which is, I think I have a slide on it. Universal design is the design of products and environments to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible. So provide the same means of use for all users, avoid segregating or stigmatizing any users, etc. So for example, doorknobs on a house, in universal design they would all be lever doorknobs because a handicapped person can actually use that lever where they might not be able to turn just a round knob, and it suits for everyone. That's the concept that they're getting at there. Moving on to program 10, another thing that's coming down the pipe here is the California Green Building Standards Code. These are provisions that will be mandatory in 2010, so I've just included a program here that says the city is going to adopt those. Program 14, let's see, this has to do with, one of the things that came out in our workshop was the need for design guidelines for multifamily housing. And so this is about that. The city shall adopt standards, I'll read it. The city shall adopt standards for the design, maintenance, and operation of multifamily housing to ensure that a basic level of quality is achieved and sustained for this important type of housing. Such standards shall be drafted to be non-discretionary to ensure that they cannot become a basis for disapproving a multifamily housing project. Moving on to Program 15, the city shall collaborate with fair housing advocates to promote first-time homebuyer education and help protect homebuyers from unwise lending practices. This is again something that came up in our workshop back in January. Part of the recognition of the housing crisis being that people made unwise choices when it came to mortgages. So some consumer education made sense at that time, still does, I believe. Program 16, this has to do with the neighborhood stabilization program that the city has some funds coming for. And this is simply saying that the city shall develop a program to use these programs to do one or more of the following: establishing financial mechanisms for purchase and redevelopment of foreclosed homes, establishment of land banks for homes that have been foreclosed, demolition of blighted structures, redevelopment of demolished or vacant properties. Program 17, amend the Newman zoning ordinance to add emergency shelters as an allowed use by right in at least one zoning district within the city. This is in response to new statute. Doesn't say that you have to build an emergency shelter. It simply says that you have to have a zoning district and actually a site that could be developed in that zoning district by right for an emergency shelter if someone cared to build one. 18, the city shall, as staffing resources allow, participate in the annual census of homeless persons. And I know you guys are in the middle of a conversation about homelessness and the like, and the approach that we've taken here in this housing element is to keep it regional. That there's a regional network of folks at the county level that regularly work at homelessness, work on homelessness issues and the like, networking with them, doing their annual census, work with them every year is a good way to keep plugged in with them. Then when problems arise, you have people to go to, resources. Hey, we've got a few people with this kind of a problem. You know, are there resources around that can help? Plugging into that regional network keeps it from becoming just a local problem. And I think that was it. So with regard to Planning Commission recommendations, excuse me for just a moment. I'm just at the tail end of a cold and I have to keep drinking. The Planning Commissioners were kind enough to put considerable work into the housing element document. And so most of those comments were encapsulated in a letter that was dated April 1st. And Stephanie, I believe that did you put Crescentia's letter in City Council packet and my response to it? Is that part of what City Council has in front of them?
I gave them the draft update document, so did you include that in your draft?
Well, the draft document has all those changes incorporated, so maybe it's not, I mean, they were actually fairly minor comments. Nothing was terribly substantive. We made corrections, so suffice it to say we got a pretty detailed letter from Crescentia, and we went through and made changes. It was very helpful. At last Thursday meeting, there was just really a couple of very minor points. One had to do with a reference on page 239 to medical facilities in Gustine. That needed to be updated. On page 2-87, in policy 3A6, delete the word all from that policy, and then in program 3-8, delete the phrase local nonprofit. Now, these last three changes here are not represented in the document you have, but they're minor, and we'll certainly incorporate those changes the next time we print it, or when we print it for public distribution. So that's pretty much the presentation. I wanted to spend a little bit of time with you guys because I haven't been before you for a number of years now, and I thought it hopefully was worth taking the time to give you a little bit of background on this. We are looking for conceptual approval tonight. Once we have that, we're going to, of course, distribute the housing element for public review. We'll prepare that environmental document, which I already have a draft of, and we'll bring it back. I believe it'll be in August for that formal adoption. So that's it. That's the presentation. I got through it without really coughing too much. Are there any questions for me?
Thank you, Martin. Any questions from the council? Okay. Mike, did you have some comments you wanted to make at this time?
No, I'll discuss it later at the end.
Okay. Since this is a public hearing, I'd like to open up to the public for any comments they may have. Being none, I'd like to bring it back to the council for direction, please.
I'll make a motion that we approve General Plan Amendment number 09-01, conceptual approval of the housing element document for purposes of HCD review.
Second?
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. On to regular business. 10A, adopt resolution number 2009, next number, a resolution modifying the date of completion of the underground utility district NOS 5A, 5B, and 5C in the city of Newman. They want
Honorable
an
Mayor Pro Tem
they want an
Martina.
extension. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.
I'm used to saying Honorable Mayor Cade.
Thank you.
Honorable Mayor Pro Tem Martina and council members, item before you tonight is to adopt a resolution modifying the completion dates for the underground utility districts 5A, 5B, and 5C. The underground utility districts previously were established on the 24th of August by resolution, or August 2007, resolution 2007-40-48, and that for the removal of the pole, the purpose of that was for removal of the poles, overhead wires, and facilities for electrical service. The affected utility companies have met here at the city to discuss the work necessary to complete the underground districts 5A, 5B, and 5C, and determined that the dates that were established by the previous resolution needed to be extended. There's a few reasons for due to delays. We're establishing a trenching agent, which would be the one agency responsible to ensure all the trenches were put into in accordance with that. After that discussion was established, and then it was moved to the design phase of the districts. As a result of the design delays and the number of easements necessary, because we had a number of easements after walking the districts, we found that we had to establish those before we could move forward. We found it was necessary to move the dates. So the item before you today is to extend those completion dates for items 5A, underground districts 5A and 5B to July 30th, 2010, and 5C for July 30, 2011. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those for you.
Any questions of the council?
Do you want to go public or council first?
It's
Bob?
not a public.
Okay. I just wonder what, I saw that due to delays and established a trenching agent. What does that really mean?
There were some discussions to determine who would be responsible for the overall construction, and then the other utility agencies would then be involved in ensuring their part was done. So they needed somebody to be the lead agency. And some of the agencies have specific contracts when it comes to their utility putting it in as to how much they get paid. So they needed to find who to be the lead agency. They preferred that Newman be the lead agency, but we don't have the staff or the ability to do that this time. So then there was discussions back and forth. Finally, we just determined we needed to have a meeting, get together, and figure this out. So I assembled our engineer and the utility companies together, and we determined that Comcast would be the utility agency that would be the lead on that. So those discussions happened over a period of a few months, and we kept trying to have them quicker so that we could not run into this delay. And then once we determined who the trenching agent was, we walked the facility and determined there's a number of easements that were required to finish this.
That's what I don't get. I thought that was all taken care of. I thought the easements were already done and everything was ready to go, and
I think that was for the original one for the Plaza project, but not for 5A, B, and C, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you got to remember, due to time constraints, we focused just on the plaza.
Just
now
on the plaza.
There's separate sections now. You have between Fresno and Merced, then you have between Tulare and Mariposa, and then
Yeah.
you have the other side. So
but-
it's been broken out into
Yeah.
different sections
Yeah.
and phases now.
but what we established first, and that's the plaza and stuff, so
Right.
we're fine then. Okay, I didn't realize that was the other
Yeah.
sections of it then. Okay.
The city manager's correct. They did focus on that so we can move forward with the design and get
Exactly.
the Plaza
Yep.
project completed.
Okay, good.
Now, how does this affect the timeline for the project,
For the Plaza project or for this project?
for the Plaza project?
Plaza project, the underground's been completed on that. They had one last easement left to complete before they could finish getting the poles removed, but that project's moving forward.
Okay.
This has no effect on the Plaza at
Oh,
all.
not at all, okay.
Good.
Okay. Any other questions of the council? Thank you very much, Gardner.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Bring it back to the council for a motion.
I make a motion that we adopt the resolution 2009, God bless you, modifying the date of completion of the underground utility district, 5A, 5B, and 5C in the city of Newman.
Second.
Motion been made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. 10B, award bid for wastewater treatment plant effluent storage basin. That's yours
Good evening
also?
again.
Hey,
The item for you
We
today
love
is, the item for you tonight is to award a contract for the Newman Effluent Storage Basin Project to Ramana Construction. The wastewater treatment plant storage project was identified in the 2008 wastewater master plan and is also identified by the Regional Water Quality Control Board as a project necessary to bring the facility into 100-year flood control requirements. This project went out to bid, and a pre-bid meeting was held on April 22nd, 2009, as required by the contract specifications. And the bids were received and opened and read on May 13th, 2009. A total of 14 bids were received for the project. In your package, you have a spreadsheet of the bids of every contractor that bid on the project. The local, our engineering firm, Ecologic Engineering, did provide a bid evaluation, which I have provided to you as well, that talks about the project. The three low bidders, Ramana was the lowest bidder at $595,000. The second low bidder was Tykert Construction, $656,150, and Ross Carroll was the third low bidder at $773,250. So we did have a group of bidders down at a very low price. The remaining bids averaged between $804,000 and $1.3 million. There's probably going to be some questions regarding the difference between the engineer's estimate of $2.56 million and the low bidder of $595,000. I'll be happy to tell you. The engineer's estimate was completed approximately 2 years ago when construction costs were escalating at approximately 20% per year. We've seen, due to demands in materials and the construction boom that was happening so quickly, prices were really escalating quickly. When this estimate was done, this was established when the city was moving forward to try to get their financing for this together, and the estimate was never revised since then. As a result of the current status that we're in with the economic climate, we're seeing bids that are drastically reduced. In addition to that, we took out one element of the project, which was to put some fabric around the perimeter of the basin for stabilization, but we found through through our engineering firm that the ground is stable enough. We haven't had any problem with erosion, so we don't need that. We will put riprap there, so that lowered the price by taking the fabric out. Therefore, we ended up with, actually, we expected bids around $1 million, but we got them at $595,000. Quite a savings. We're very happy to see that. So that's kind of my explanation for that part of it. In addition to that, it was very, very competitive out there. 14 bidders. You typically would expect between 5 to 6 bidders. And it was very competitive. So I think with the competitive nature out there, Newman really benefits from the opportunity to bid it at this time in this economic status. Therefore, the item for you is to consider awarding this contract to Ramana Construction for $595,000. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
it's, when you look at the difference, it's amazing.
Just a little.
More than amazing, yeah. So as long as we get the same project for the $595,000, I'm certainly in favor of that.
Garner, I've got
Yes,
a
sir.
couple of questions. I'm going to assume that you've checked out the reputation of this bidder, and
I myself didn't do it. Our engineer that we
Past
hired
part.
previously, council approved Ecologic Engineering to do a bid evaluation, and they submitted all their bid forms. They did check their resumes to make sure that they've done this type of work before. It was all required in the contract specs, make sure they had experience in this type of work. Then they did meet all of the requirements of our contract specs on that part of it.
And has anyone checked some of the projects that they have done? And
We didn't do any field visits on the project they did. The engineer called to ensure that they did do that type of work and check their references on that.
I mean, I always go back to that old saying, you get what you pay for. So, I mean, I like it, the fact that it's a little under $600,000, but I'm just curious of why, there's bidders in there twice that much. And
That is always the dilemma when you go with a low bidder. Sometimes you pay for what you get. Another reason why we hired Ecologic Engineering to handle the construction management part of it. They designed it. They know exactly what they're after. They're really familiar with our wastewater treatment plant, and therefore we feel they're the best contract management firm to handle this project to ensure we get what we paid for. Going with a low bidder, you always run that risk. You also run the risk of change orders. Therefore, Ecologic Engineering is very familiar with this type of work. Their contract specifications were very specific. They were very thick, 2-inch thick contract specifications on this project. So we expect that they'll be on top of this every step of the way. And it is not a very complicated project. It's basically an earth-moving project. We're going to be digging out the basin, using the dirt to build the berms around it, putting some riprap on it, one small concrete structure. Some of the topsoil that we're taking off initially will be used to fill in an existing ditch. So there's no electrical involved, no pumps, no piping to speak of. So it's not a very complicated job. So we don't expect that we'll get something we didn't plan for.
Okay.
Good question.
Martin, a question, you talked about the liner.
Yes,
Was
sir.
that a substantial savings by changing that liner?
The filter fabric that they put for the bank stabilization, they estimated at about $150,000
Okay.
in the engineer's estimate. So it was a pretty good savings, we think.
Okay.
And the soil out there, it lends itself such that we shouldn't have any erosion. We haven't seen it in any of our other basins that are out there. We haven't seen that problem, so that's why we decided it wasn't worth the cost to do that.
Thank you.
You bet.
Mayor Pro Tem, just a quick point. The second bidder, who is not that much more than the low bidder, is a very reputable firm in the area. So this lowest bid is not far off from where they're at. So if that gives you any credibility to this particular firm, if you look at who that second firm is, that's a well-known name around the area.
Yeah, very well.
And if you look, the cost is not that much difference between the low and the second low. So.
No. But it still is amazing when you go up to the highest bidder. Wow.
Where are these folks out of?
Atascadero. There were no local firms that bid on this project. Tykert was the closest, and they're from Turlock, I believe.
We have 1209 number there.
I think that would be Tykert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of them, actually.
Right, Tykert, that's 632, that's Turlock.
Yeah. Clark Brothers are in there. There's a few other ones.
Yeah. Well, great. This is good news.
Good job.
Thank you very much.
I hope so.
Don't go there.
Okay. If there's no further questions, bring it back to the council for direction.
I'll make a motion, we award the bid for the wastewater treatment plant effluent storage basin to Ramina Corporation.
I second.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those approved. Motion carried. Item number 10C, adopt resolution 2009, next number, approving the annual local transportation fund claim. And number 2, authorize the city manager to execute the claim on behalf of the city of Newman.
Thank you, Mayor. The item for you tonight, as you just expressed, is to adopt resolution, the next resolution in line, approving the LTF claim number 2. This supersedes LTF claim number 1 that was brought to you in February of 2009. The original claim was for $76,000. The change is as a result of additional funding come into the MPO, the local the Metropolitan Planning Organization, STANCOG. The STANCOG proposes to take this item to the advisory committee the week of May 25th this week, and to the policy board for approval on June 10th of 2009. The claim is for $83,550 to provide for the local match for Kern Street, Driscoll Avenue sidewalk, and a purchase of 2 CNG vehicles. The funding is also used to maintain, reconstruct streets, roads, and implement a pavement management system. In addition, we have an allocation in here for $6,288 for maintaining sidewalks and bike paths. There's no cost to submitting this claim. The claim is to provide the city with a total of $89,838 to offset costs in 2008-2009 fiscal year LTF street projects. Budget, I'm sorry. If there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Any questions from the council? Being none, I'll bring it back to the council for direction, please.
I move that we adopt resolution 2009, next number, approving the annual local transportation fund claim number 2, and to authorize the city manager to execute the claim on behalf of the city of Newman.
I second it.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. 10D, introduction and first reading of ordinance number 2009, next number, amending Title 2, Boards and Commission, Chapter 2.02, Emergency Services Organization.
Good evening again. This is a, update really to an existing ordinance to just sort of refresh it and make it match our existing practices. In late 2008, August of '08, this council established a resolution to join the Stanislaus Council Disaster Council, where all of the cities and the counties collectively joined together to form one council to provide for better coordination and communication versus each city trying to do it on its own, being that if there was a significant disaster in our area, we would all be working together anyway, so it just didn't make sense to do things independently. This just brings our ordinance in line with that resolution and basically says the same thing that we did in the resolution, but we're now establishing it by ordinance. This was brought about because we're in the process of updating our emergency operations plan, which we do every 5 years. So the only other significant change, the first major change was just that, changing it instead of City of Newman Disaster Council to a Stanislaus County. The second significant change, which is also consistent with what the other cities in the county does as well, the city manager or the chief executive for the county versus a political position is the director of emergency services rather than a political person. In our case, it was the mayor. We're now changing that to the city manager. It does not relieve or take away council's right to direct policy at any time, including in a disaster. It just, instead of having the mayor in charge of day-to-day operations in the event of a disaster, we leave it just like we do with everything else with the city manager. And then, of course, could be his designee, and the designated designee in our city is the police chief. So those are really only the two changes to it, and be happy to answer any other questions if you have any.
Any questions of the chief? Being none, bring it back to council for direction.
What do we have to do with this? Adopt it or
It's an
motion?
introduction and first reading.
This is the first reading, so I'll be back on January or June 9th for the
So
second
we don't
reading.
have to do anything right now, do we?
Yeah, we need a motion.
Oh, okay.
Motion to introduce.
Oh, I make a motion that we introduce the modifications to Newman City Code Title B, Boards and Commissions, Chapter 2.02, Emergency Services Organization.
I second that.
All in favor? Excuse me.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. 10E, introduce the first reading of ordinance number 2009, next number, amending Title 8, Health and Sanitation, Chapter 8.04, Graffiti Control.
At the direction of this council, we explored modifications to our existing graffiti ordinance, and this is what we're proposing, modeled majority after the city of Ceres, with some inclusions, the city of Modesto as well. The significant changes, most of it is essentially the same. The definitions, what's a violation of law, those types of things. The significant change is one of our previous, or the existing ordinance today allows a 7-day window and then a number of notices, and really it takes about 21 days before we could really abate a property for graffiti. What this does is we close the window literally down to 4 days, with 3 days from the date of the notice. For example, if we go out and take the report in the morning, we can provide the notice immediately on the spot via the officer. The property owner is then notified they have 3 days to clean the graffiti. Literally on the 4th day, we could abate the property. Included in that notice, though, would be their admonishment that they have a right to appeal, of course, to extend that period. And then we have to hear that. We even provide constraints on our end so we don't delay. We have to hear it within 48 hours. So we're really narrowing this whole abatement process down to less than a week. It does remove the council from the process, though, to get to that time constraint. we have to go to a hearing officer format versus the full council as we do for the other nuisance properties. So that's the significant change to the ordinance. Additionally, we've established an administrative penalty for those that fail to comply, and other administrative penalties just for individuals that are responsible for the graffiti. So this is not all about property owners. This is the all-inclusive resort. Everything to do with graffiti we have covered in this ordinance. We've added things, aid in a bed. So, for example, I'm the 13-year-old kid spray painting, and my buddy's standing next to me watching and laughing. Previously, it would be difficult to do anything with a friend who's standing there and egging the person on, or these kinds of things. Now we could prosecute that individual as well administratively. We could administratively fine the property owner that just snubs their nose and doesn't care, or even willingly allows people to paint on their building. What are the other significant changes? We've added, we were using a county ordinance to enforce our commercial establishments to secure graffiti, instruments, cans of spray paint, things like that behind locked cabinets. We used the county ordinance for that, and we got voluntary compliance from the commercial establishments. But now, just to reaffirm that, we've added that to our ordinance, that if you sell those type of products, they have to be secured so minors cannot purchase those. You have to be 18 to purchase them. You have to be over 18 to possess them. So we've just really strengthened it in a lot of areas. A lot of it talks about the hearing and abatement procedure, how that will work. We've added some cost recovery things. We've specified that if it's a minor, that the parents will be held responsible. And we've also added that regardless of what the criminal courts do, we still reserve the right to follow through administratively through administrative fines or other city recourse. So just because we may book the person in juvenile hall, it doesn't mean we can't do both. We can't administratively fine them as well or require them to clean it up through a diversion. We've put a reward in there, and I think those are the significant changes. We increased the administrative fee, $200 for the first offense, $300 for the second within the first year. All of these are within 1 year. $500 for the third within the first year. I can't think of anything else unless you have any specific questions.
I've gone through this very carefully, and I have to thank you, Chief. I think you've done a wonderful job. You know, the faster we can get that graffiti off or wherever it's on, the better our town's going to be off. I personally have been out riding my bicycle and going around all through the alleys and checking for graffiti. I don't know, it seems like there's less graffiti now, for one reason or another, knock on wood. I don't know why.
Well, I think it's a combination of things, a lot of education. We've made some pretty significant arrests. We have the volunteers out painting. I think everyone collectively is just doing their part, so I think it's helping. And this is not, I didn't do much work on this, really. I mean, we didn't reinvent the wheel. It's a very fresh ordinance, 2003 ordinance from Ceres. I just thought there was a few things missing that we found in Modesto's ordinance, and we added those in and sort of made our own, and the city attorneys reviewed it and blessed it as well. So I think it'll be a very strong tool for us to deal with those responsible and those that aren't responsive in cleaning it up.
Thank you. Any questions for the council?
I just want to, the teeth, you put some teeth in this thing, it's wonderful. But I just ask you to just have some common sense too, which you guys do.
Yeah.
I'm not even questioning that, but down the line, I mean, if somebody, I know this 3-day, I know the notice goes right out, and if they just leave it on the doorstep, these people might be away on vacation.
Correct.
Come back to find out that they're being, they've got a fine, they've got this
Correct.
and that. And I know you guys will take that into consideration, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Just like on the
Yeah.
nuisance properties, we work very closely with the property owners.
Yeah.
By the time they get to you, again, on the other property ones, we have done so much with these people and given extensions, and the goal is not to make money, the goal is to get compliance and prevention. So, and I think we even talked about on the administrative fees, if necessary. I think I added some words like that. And I meant to imply that
Right.
it doesn't mean we're always going to do that. It's not an automatic.
No.
It's just as if you stop someone for a speeding, some people, simple slow down
Yeah.
works well, and others you need to motivate them differently. So we just wanted to put that in as a tool. But you're absolutely, it'll not be arbitrary all the time. Your fourth day, we're out sticking a ticket on your door. We'll work with people, definitely.
I know you will.
Thank you
It's
very
wonderful.
much, Chief.
Good job.
Great job. Okay, I'd like to bring it back to the council for direction.
I make a motion that we adopt the report on proposed modifications to ordinance 8.04 graffiti control.
I second the motion.
Motion been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Number 10F,
I know, thank
adopt
you.
resolution number 2009, a resolution authorizing the execution and delivery of the installment sale agreement by and between the City of Newman and the California Infrastructure and Economic Development Bank, and approving certain other matters in connection therewith then.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Our finance director is on vacation, so I'll go ahead and take this one for her. This actually is part and parcel with a previous item, which was the wastewater treatment plant effluent storage basin contract that you just awarded. Back in 2006, 2007, we really started working on this project and getting it to the I-Bank. As you know, we had significant trouble trying to get all the paperwork done because they ended up calling the Regional Water Quality Control Board, and they were stonewalling us, and we ended up in our Assemblywoman Kathleen Galgiani's office working this whole thing out. So finally got it off the snide. What we have today are the final documents necessary for us to secure that loan. The couple things I need to point out is, as you'll look through the documents, the original loan amount was $3.1 million. That's what we originally anticipated it was going to need to build this project. Back when the market was hot, we were hoping to get 2, maybe 3 bidders. Nowhere did we ever think that we would get 14 until most recently anyways. In addition, the interest rate is sub 4%. It's 3.87%, which is a very fair rate for us to get that kind of money. We've had conversations with the I-Bank regarding this matter and the extra money that's now available to us because we're using $600,000 plus we're using about $175,000 for construction management. That leaves an untold amount of $2.4 million. Well, we do have a need out at our wastewater treatment plant to secure additional disposal land. As some of you know, what we do is we treat the effluent that goes out there, and then we store it in the big basins, levees that are out there. And then when we're done, we put it on that agricultural land that surrounds it, and we grow crops. And we make approximately $50,000 to $60,000 a year in crops by farming. Well, because we're putting this plant on some of our ag land, and in addition, as we continue to get larger, we will need about another 150 acres of land to dispose of this water. And part of that is also at the recommendation of our chief plant operator, who likes to keep land fallow. He doesn't like to farm every field every year. He likes to take a season off for a particular field, and that's generally how agriculture works, is you don't try to overwork the land. You want to give it a rest. So we are now asking the I-Bank, is what they're called, if we can use some of that land, some of that money for purchase of additional disposal land. Now, any deal for the purchase of disposal land would obviously have to come back to you and make sure that you would approve any final purchase or any terms of any agreements. All we're asking for is, hey, give us that money's already in the loan document. Give us an opportunity to see if we can use it to purchase future land for that disposal. It is a need. It is identified in our master plan as being needed for an additional 150 acres, and we think it would be a good use of land. Our chief plant operator supports this request, so just kind of giving you a heads up that that's what we're looking at doing. And we'll bring future information back to you as we continue to have conversations with the state regarding this matter. But what we have before you tonight is basically is a loan agreement. Right now, that loan agreement is only for the $595,000 and the extra $175,000, give or take, that's going to take for construction management. Any additional expenditures of the 3.1 line of credit, I'm going to call it, would have to come before you before we could take any additional money. So, with that, I can answer any questions that you may have right now.
Michael, the 150 acres, how would that affect us in the future? Would that be, how far would it take us as far as, so before we'd be looking at buying additional land?
It would take us well into the future. I would project probably in the next 10 to 15 years of disposal land for us, we would be well taken care of. And probably even potentially into a partial of our next phase of expansion at such time that does occur. But more than anything, it gives us flexibility on how we're operating right now under our current permit. And again, if we did that, that would also raise our revenues out there as we had more land to farm. That would generate additional revenues for the sewer enterprise fund.
And how are property values right now in that area?
Well, we haven't gone out and started negotiating with the property owner yet. We wanted to see how the conversation with the state went. But the land that we're looking at is adjacent to our wastewater treatment plant. It's non-CCID water lands. There's no water that comes with it. So from an agricultural perspective, it would probably be on the lower scale because it's a non-district property. So from that perspective, there's no water that comes with the land. So when there's lack of water, the cost tends to go down. So we think the market is favorable for us to go out and try to purchase additional land at this point in time.
Any other questions for Michael at this time? Being none, I'll bring it back to the council for direction.
I'll make a motion we adopt the resolution authorizing the execution and delivery of the installment sale by and between the City of Newman and the California Infrastructure and Economic Development Bank, and approving certain other matters in connection therewith.
I second it.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Next item, 10G, adopt resolution 2009 authorizing the commencement of all aspects of the proposed 2010 amendment to the redevelopment plan.
Thank you, Newman Redevelopment Agency, on this particular matter. As you know, and we've talked a lot about this over probably the last year, is we have some financial constraints within our redevelopment plan. And some of those constraints are setting a cap limit on how much tax increment we could actually get. Back in, I believe it was around September of October last year, we had Mr. Marshall Lynn come in and do a full presentation on that matter. So in January of this year, this agency approved and authorized a plan amendment, 2010 plan amendment, that would do four things. One would establish a limit on bond indebtedness that can be outstanding at any one time and payable from tax increment. Increase the total limit of tax increment to be allocated to the agency over the life of the plan. Eliminate the limitation on tax increment to be allocated to the agency during any one fiscal year. And then modify the plan's projects and programs list as may be appropriate to respond to current project area and improvement needs. So basically, we have a cumulative tax increment agreement limit right now that we can only collect $30 million. Well, back in 1992, $30 million used to be a lot of money. Nowadays, we're going to be pushing up against that limit not too far into the future. So what we're going to actually go out, and we have to go out, and this is what you originally approved in January. They're going to go out and reassess our redevelopment agency plan area, and they're going to look at all the blight and how much money would actually take to eliminate all the blight in the area. Right now, they're projecting that tax increment limit could be in the $100 to $125 million range. In addition, we currently have a limit of $3 million is all we can get in one particular year. We're going to look at raising that limit as well, to, I believe, to $30 million. So between those two things, what the essence is we don't want to leave any meat on the bone. And I mean that by saying is we have the potential through assessed values increasing that we can get more funds and make those available to the redevelopment agency to do projects like, here's some projects for you that you may not be aware of. The redevelopment agency purchased the West Side Theater. So that may be a project, if there's something in the future that comes along and we don't have and raise our cap, we may not be able to do a purchase like the West Side Theater. The redevelopment agency is participating in the downtown plaza. The redevelopment agency is participating with the Newman Aquatic Center. And so the redevelopment agency also participated in the downtown streetscape program. You know, we have another item on here where we're working with businesses to bring sales tax revenues, to enhance our sales tax revenues in our community, to eliminate blight, to create jobs. These are all things that the redevelopment agency does. So what we're trying to do is just leave all the opportunities available to us to get all the money that we could be entitled to if we raise these limits. So with that, there's a couple findings that we need to, that are required by state law. If you're going to do certain things, you have to have a project area committee, which is a PAC. If you're going to grant the agency the authority to get land through eminent domain, you have to have a PAC. If we're going to add territory to our redevelopment agency, you need to have a PAC. At this particular point in time, our authority for eminent domain has expired, and we're not requesting that be brought back. So we're not asking for eminent domain proceedings. So that has expired and sunsetted with our agency, and we intend to leave it that way. The second thing is, at this point in time, we're not anticipating adding territory to our redevelopment agency. Now, there was some talk earlier to where one characteristic of blight is substantial reduction in property values. And as you know, some of the newer neighborhoods have had a substantial reduction in property values. But along with that reduction in property values, there literally has to be physical blight improvements that have to take place in those particular areas. And at this point in time, we don't see being able to meet that second finding, which is unfortunate, because if we could add some of that territory, this redevelopment agency would be very, very well-to-do into the future as property values came back. But we don't anticipate doing that. So part of what we're asking you to do tonight is make the requirement that a PAC is not required. And you'll make this a finding also later on in the process as well. So, because this is, and the fiscal impact to this is actually positive in the long run, because it allows the agency to collect more tax increment and to spend that money locally to try to create jobs, to try to enhance our revenues, and to eliminate blight. As you are also aware, 20% of your redevelopment funds have to be set aside for low and moderate housing. You know, one of the housing projects that we have, or we're still continuing to work with, this Corporation for Better Housing. That's 68 units that be coming to our community, and this agency helped out with a loan of $300,000. So with that, we're recommending that we move forward and adopt the attached resolutions and commence all the aspects of the 2010 redevelopment plan amendment. I can answer any questions that you may have at this point in time.
Michael, just a comment from me. Raising the limits is so important, so crucial to our city. I mean, if you've talked about all the different products that the redevelopment agencies touched, it just, where would we be today if you looked around our town and said, without the redevelopment agency, we wouldn't have these projects. They wouldn't have been completed.
That's correct.
So I'm certainly a proponent of the redevelopment agency. But anyway, that's the only comment I have. Anyone else?
Sorry to interrupt you, Bob. That affected the aquatic center, didn't it? the borrowing of money for that, Mike?
It could. It
I-
could if we
yeah.
don't. It affects our ability to go out and sell bonds
Yep.
to generate the revenues in order to build the aquatic center. Otherwise, we would have to set money aside every year and accumulate that amount of money. So yes, it affects our ability at this point in time to
Yep.
sell bonds and to raise revenues.
No further questions. I'd like to bring it back to the council for direction.
I make a motion that we adopt the proposal 210 amendment to the redevelopment plan.
Second.
Motion been made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. 10H, approve final redevelopment business loan document for Jose Reynoso.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Again, this was a project that you approved a couple weeks ago because there's a financial situation involved with it. I didn't feel comfortable moving forward without the council being aware of all the situation. You did authorize, in the terms of it, and authorize the chief executive officer to loan money to Depot Garage in order to buy a local dealership and to start up a used car sales as part of that. After we were doing our due diligence and getting down to it, we got the preliminary report. There's an issue that I wanted to bring to your attention and get direction on. As you can see, we did attach a loan agreement to you, and there is a $200,000 loan that we're looking at moving forward with. One of the situations that exists, though, is there are two liens on the property right now. The first lien is $150,000. The second lien is a $50,000 line of credit, which essentially puts us in third position for the $200,000. Now, the appraisal of the property came in at $525,000, so there is equity within the property that is using to be collateral, but again, I have to say that there's a certain amount of risk when you sit in a third position because the other two get done first. So with that, I wanted to make the council aware of it and get some direction from the council. Unfortunately, because of the 4-day weekend and some of the other things I had on my plate today, I wasn't able to get a hold of Mr. Reynoso to try to see if we can improve our position. I think in a best case scenario, we could improve to second position. I think second position is a stronger position than the third position. And so I just, again, I want to get the feel from the agency and what your comfort level is if we can get our loan into the second position. And again, there's a deed of trust that gets recorded on the property as part of this. I want to get your direction on where we're at with that before I move forward. I don't feel comfortable moving forward without the agency's direction on that.
One of the questions I had, Michael, the collateral that he put up was property that was evaluated in April 2008.
Yes.
I have concern because that may not be the appraisal today.
That's correct. That's correct. Now, I guess the only caveat I would say would be is commercial, it tends to hold its value a little bit better than residential, but again, that's not a quantified appraisal at this particular point in time, so I couldn't tell you exactly what the final value is on that.
Could one of the requirements be that we reappraise that property? Is that a requirement, or could that be a requirement?
We could to ensure that there is adequate equity in that property. That is definitely either that or he puts up something else that would give us additional collateral on the property for the loan.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
Mike, just explain what you mean when you say that we're in third place.
Well, there's already two loans on the property. So for us to come in and record a deed of trust, we would be underneath. So those other ones recorded prior to us, so they would be paid off first in case of a foreclosure or a bankruptcy or those types of things. We would be in a less position of strength than the other two.
Not only that, but if he stops making the payments on the first and second, the third holder has to make the payments to the first and second to secure their position.
Right.
I think that's not acceptable. In today's economy,
Sure.
I find that unacceptable.
I think we ought to, I don't know, is there a possibility of Mr. Reynosa putting up some other collateral?
Yeah, those are some of the conversations I will be having with him tomorrow. Not only the second one, but a separate piece of property. I'm not sure that he's going to have property that's clear title that gives us that kind of collateral. I think if he did, he probably would put that up already, or maybe borrowed against it. So that's why I'm trying to, if I can get some direction from the agency with respect to what type of risk are you willing to assume? Would you be willing to assume a second position on a piece of property if there's a recent appraisal that shows that there's adequate equity in it? Is that something that you want? I'm looking to you as the board to tell me how you would like that handled.
Why I personally would feel better, I would, if I knew that property was worth that much, at today's value,
Mm-hmm.
then that certainly would make a difference to me. I'd be a little bit concerned with the older appraisal, and even though it's commercial, Michael, I just would like to see what it would come to today market.
And it's really poor practice to be any more than 50% on dirt. No, nobody's going to loan more than 50%, and we're putting ourselves in a very bad position if we do this.
What do you say? Well, my feeling is, get back to Mr. Noso and talk to him and explain the situation and tell him we don't want to be the third party.
Right.
A loan like that.
Yeah, we cannot take a $200,000 hit, but
No.
Mike, I was looking at 2012, that's when he starts paying interest. What kind of property taxes and sales revenue you estimating he will be in before that? Yeah,
Well,
any
he-
idea? Just a rough guess. I don't mean to put you on the spot here, but
Yeah, he's required by the second year to be generating $1 million in sales.
And what if he's not?
And then we can foreclose on the loan, is essentially what our opportunities have become.
But if we're more than 50% on the dirt over there, foreclosure is not really a good option for us.
Right.
I'm not comfortable being in third position.
I agree.
Consensus of the council then to let,
I'll go
City
back
manager
and I'll
go
go
back,
back
yeah.
and continue to work with him and try to,
Okay.
one, get a current appraisal so you can see what the
Yeah.
current value of it is, and then two, work with him on exactly how much is outstanding at this point.
we
in
should be
time.
able to get second position, I would think.
Right. So if we get rid of the line of credit, that essentially gets rid of one of them, and then we can check and see where he's at with his current loan in terms of financially. Has he paid any of it off? Is he still at 150? What are the terms of that agreement and those types of things? The other thing is we can also look at and see what other properties he may own that could be used as collateral.
Okay.
The gentleman has a good rep, doesn't he? From what I understand.
He does.
Yeah, Dan
he
Augustine
has a
and-
very good. He has a very
Yeah.
good business
Yeah.
over there, and
So I
Oh,
mean,
we'd love to have
that's in
him in
his
there.
favor,
yeah,
definitely.
So I mean,
We'd
from,
love to
from
But
a-
we can't afford to.
And this is used car, not a new car, right?
well, he's still working with Mr. Bigelow to see if he can buy the dealership name.
So I mean, I'd be interested to see if that 1,100 GM dealerships is one of these, could be
Right.
one of these on the
Very-
hit list.
Very well.
Yeah.
Very well could.
Okay.
Okay, so I will bring this back to you.
That'd be
No
great.
action will be taken by staff until further notice from the council, which will occur on June 9th.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you very much, Mike. Item 11, from District 5, Stanislaus County Supervisor, Mr. Jim DiMartini.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem Martina, council members. I had two things I wanted to bring up tonight. First of all, the Doris Timber Creek Flood Control Project, there has been no movement on that at all within this last month that I'm aware of. I have contacted Congressman Cardozo's office twice in the last month. I have been told that the Corps of Engineers is still calculating the cost of the bypass channel They are not ready yet they're finished with their paperwork for us to have a meeting about it. Although I can't tell you when it's going to be, but I would think it would be within the next month. But the Corps of Engineers has never set the world on fire on this project, and so this has been dragging on for years and run up a bill now of I would say somewhere around $4 million already, just and this isn't even a project ready to go out to bid yet. But anyway, the latest that I got from Cardozo's office last week, I got an email from Didi Diadamo, and it's still not done yet, but it's ongoing. So hopefully, before I go into the nursing home, we will be able to get a project, ready to go out to bid. But it sure has been a long struggle. On a more positive note, the West Side Healthcare Task Force is prepared to start doing its first event. As you know, we've been meeting for about 2 years now and have the cooperation of the 2 healthcare districts, Merced, Stanislaus County, and 3 cities, along with the 3 hospitals. And so we will meet again on June 4th in Gustine, but on August 6th we're going to do a Healthy Choices event. We're going to start releasing the press release tomorrow. Keith Boggs and I are going to be meeting with the Patterson Irrigator and the West Side Index. The first event will be on August 6th at the West Side Theater right here in Newman. And that has been secured. We have contacted a caterer out of Gustine already, Mary Alice. That's what
Oh, yeah.
So.
Excellent.
But I don't think
We've
there's
got
any.
the best in the whole area.
Lots of calories now, make sure it's.
So one of the things we're going to do is a weigh-in that day for the different teams of Newman, Patterson, and Gustine. So if you want to be in that weigh-in, eat all you want now. So when you weigh out at the Fall Festival here in Newman, you can be the big winner. We're also going to have an essay contest with the schools. These are on healthy choices and lifestyle changes. We're looking at reductions in obesity and things that plague the area, like asthma, diabetes, and those are the really big ones. We have more lofty goals for the long-term future of the task force into eventually being able to build a hospital here on the west side. But we're doing something that's feasible and realistic right now. I will be making presentations along with Keith Boggs to the 3 school districts, Newman, Patterson, and Gustine. We are on their agendas, and I believe June 8th we will be here in Newman giving that presentation. I also am putting together a PowerPoint demonstration program for the Rotaries in Newman and Gustine, and we are on their schedules on both those Rotaries too. And Keith and I will give the same presentation here before the council before the event. I'm probably in first for middle of July, probably second meeting in July most likely. We've met for a long time, and this is a doable project. I think we're going to get a lot of press and a lot of public participation and try and make a difference here on the west side for healthcare and healthy choices. Is part of healthy living is lifestyle and things to do and not to do, and if you can make some better choices, you're not going to wind up in the emergency room or so. And so that's one of the things that we're looking at right now to get this started. So that will be again August 6th right here in Newman at the West Side Theater. And you'll be hearing a lot more about it as we get going, starting, really we're kicking it off tomorrow with the press releases and meetings with both newspapers. Okay.
Thank you, Supervisor DeMartini. We really appreciate that. Item number 12, from the city manager and staff.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Just 2 quick items. The first is our consultant, Martin Carver, today spoke a little bit about some of the things the city's going to be doing within the next year. Part of the implementation strategy that you have with the general plan is you have to go back and rezone all the property that are inconsistent with the general plan designation that was adopted. So that's part of the process that Stephanie and I are working on at this point in time, is just identifying those. And then probably in the next 3 to 6 months, we have to do the environmental documentation, run that through the planning commission, and then bring that back to you. So the 3 sites that he was talking about will be part of that as well. And then that'll be citywide. Again, that'll always stir up. It's always going to stir up debate. I'm going to forewarn you. It's going to stir up debate. It's going to stir up controversy because people tend to have an adverse reaction when you're rezoning their property without them requesting it. But again, this is something that has to happen through state law. Once you adopt a general plan designation, and as you know, your general plan is your guiding document. Some people say it's your constitution of how you're going to grow into the future, and there is a map that goes along with that. So we will provide all notices to all affected property owners for their opportunity to provide input throughout the process. But again, this is a general plan document that took 18 to 22 months to prepare and to get adopted. So at this point, we're just implementing it, not changing it. And then just the other quick reminder, June 9th, budget workshop, 6 p.m. And staff, and we're working real hard to make sure that that is a light agenda, just in case we need to carry over and get back to the workshop or move the workshop forward.
And that is at 6 o'clock, right?
That's at 6 o'clock, that's correct. Each department will be doing their presentations at that time.
Think that's enough time, Mike?
We're probably gonna be carrying over. That's why we're keeping a very light agenda that night. So.
Oh, okay.
Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
Staff? Anyone from staff?
Except one announcement, and regrettably, we were notified we did not get the Office of Traffic Safety grant. So we won't be moving forward with that. So, and they don't tell you why.
Do you know how to ride a motorcycle?
What's that?
Do you know how to ride a motorcycle?
It wouldn't be me. No.
I'm
So,
just kidding.
but that's the only announcement I have. Unless you have any questions for me.
Thank you very much, Steve.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. I just want to let you know we're gearing up for summer, which is right around the corner, next Monday, which our Fit Kids will be beginning this Monday and will be held on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays from 9 to 12 p.m., or 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Let me rephrase that. I don't want all the kids coming out at night. And that's where we do the exercises and play the games with all the kids, and that's $30 this year. This year we've added a couple of new camps. We have a cheer camp, which is going to be held June 15th through the 19th, and a new softball camp, which is August 3rd through the 7th. We're bringing back our soccer camp, which will be July 13th through the 17th, basketball camp, which is July 20th through the 24th, and volleyball camp is July 27th through the 31st. Tennis lessons will be back starting Thursday, June 4th, and it continues through June 25th for the first session, and the second session is July 9th through the 30th. And soccer registrations are continuing till June 12th, and then late registration continues through the 26th. And line dancing was more popular than we expected, and she is going to be starting a second session June 9th through July 14th. Any questions?
Terry, the only thing I can say, you're doing a marvelous job. You know, this summer newsletter, how does that get out to the general public? Is it? I know you gave us.
That was distributed to the schools today, K through 8th.
Okay, the schools receive it, and then they hand it out to the students.
They hand it out to the students, so they should all have that in their little hands tomorrow.
Yeah. Now, will the newspaper print these schedules? And
Most of the items have been in the newspaper. Line dancing, we just kind of finished up last Thursday, so it was too late for the deadline. But he did have a big, long list in last week's paper, all the camps.
Well, you're to be commended for all this because it's a lot of work.
Yes, and we can thank Alicia for translating it into Spanish for us, which is very helpful, too. It's very helpful when people come in and she's not there, I can just hand them the flyer. So then it helps me out, too.
Could we put that in the electric bill or our bill?
I'd have to check the schedule and see where we're at, and the only reason I say cautiously is, depending on where it's at, it may not be delivered timely.
We had kind of
Because of that,
deliberated
yeah,
between that,
yeah.
and by the time it would go out, a lot of these things are already be starting.
Got you.
But we also posted it on our website as well.
Very good, Terry.
Do you get any help on your cheer camp from the Oristimba cheerleaders?
I have, Coral Munoz is going to be directing that, and I know she'll probably take volunteers if somebody wants to volunteer to help.
I have 2 daughters at home that do it, so.
Send them on down.
I
We
thought-
never refuse free help.
I thought Nick was going to do it.
Yeah. You want to see me in a tutu.
I'm sure people would pay to see that.
Yeah. It's a fundraiser. Hey.
Don't
we
start
can-
it. Don't start
We can use the
Don't
money.
start that. Don't start.
You're a tough act to follow there, Mr. Candido. I just have one quick item that I'd like to talk about, a little discussion on CMAQ opportunities that is coming towards us. CMAQ is congestion mitigation air quality grant funds that we get into the city. One thing that we've already are in the process of doing, we're purchasing a new flatbed dump truck that's already in the mix. I've brought items to you before about these types of opportunities. The next purchase that we're looking at is a new lift truck, hopefully due in the next fiscal year when the funds come available. So we'll have 2 more additions to our CNG facilities, or CNG fleet vehicles that we're looking at. And then now we're looking at, I'm taking on a new task of moving into the competitive arena when it comes to CMAQ funding. Typically, the larger agencies, the county and the city of Modesto and sometimes Turlock, will be the ones that mainly get the lion's share of the competitive money for CMAQ funding. I think it's time that Newman steps into that arena. And one thing that 2 items that I'm pursuing, one of them is a Class 1 bike path. I'm going to pursue to do engineering and construction for that. We have to go competitive, so it's similar to what the chief was talking about with his funding opportunities. There's a chance that we may not get it, but I'm going to do the best that we can. So that's one item that I'm moving forward. Another one I'm going to be moving forward will be a new CNG fueling facility. Since our fleet's getting so large, we have a low pressure, low flow system. It takes quite a while for the vehicles to fuel, sometimes between 3 to 6 hours, sometimes 8 hours for the larger vehicles to fill. The new facility would be a quick fill facility, just as similar to walking up to a gas pump that you use now and fill it very quickly. So those are 2 that I have our city engineer working up estimates for us so that we can then put together an application to move into the competitive arena for the CMAQ funding. That's all I have. If you have any questions, let me know.
Hey, Gardner, the bike path, how would that program work?
Well, the bike path that we're looking at would be the one that it shows in the general plan. We have a bike path that's been outlined, the Class 1 bike paths we'd start
Okay.
with.
Okay.
And so I had the city engineer put an estimate together for the bike path as laid out within the current city limits to construct the bike paths throughout the city.
Because, I ride a bike every once in a while, and I find that there wasn't consideration given to people that ride bikes in some areas. Sherman Park, if you go out there, it's nice riding out there, but it's very narrow, and of course you want to be very careful on a bike. So I don't know if those places that can be corrected anyway, but I don't know if on the side of the shoulder it could be a bike path or what, but there's just not much room for bike riders.
Typically, the Class 1 bike paths, if I remember right, are a little wider than what was shown on Sherman Parkway. I know we have some bike paths shown coming along the railroad area, and then we
Right.
have some on the other
Right.
outskirts of the city that would be needing to accommodate that. We don't really want our pedestrians and our bikes colliding on those types of facilities. But if I remember right, the layout for the Class 1s are larger instead of a Class 2, which is just your striping on the roads. But I think that's something that's addressed in the general plan, if I remember right, on the widths.
Thank you,
That's all I
Gardner.
had. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I see one young lady shaking her head back there. Anyway, we'll go to item number 13, items from city council members.
I just want to say thank you. I had an incident happen, not me, but my neighbor did the other day, and he was in I guess it was, I call it insulin shock, and we had to call the paramedics and the fire department and volunteers and everything, and those guys were there so quickly and did such a beautiful job. Again, they've been there like 4 or 5 times in the last couple of years, and Just, I want to say thank you. Wonderful job. So, and I've already talked to Gardner about the one graffiti that we found, and that, again, thank you there. You guys had that stuff painted, and Chief, those guys are doing a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Roberta?
I don't have anything.
Nothing,
Candia?
nothing tonight.
Only comment I'd like to make, this last weekend was Memorial Day, and of course, a lot of people did participate in the activities, some out at Santa Nella, and then also Newman had one on Monday. And I just like to thank those people that were involved. We have two gentlemen here today, David Reed that was involved, and Supervisor DeMartini was also involved, and thank you for your speech, and it was inspiring, you know, that we take Jim DeMartini for granted, but thank you for coming to our city and taking the time to be here for us, because we really appreciate it, and we can't thank you enough. And it's a wonderful thing that you do, because we've had other supervisors in the past, and they've been good, but you're great. Anyway, thank you very much. And that's all I have, and we'll adjourn to closed session now.
Yeah. Not in this one.
Good job.
Well, I kind of got a little bumpy there at the beginning, and Jim City meant. Hey, get those things signed.
Yeah, I've got him up there already. Bob's got him.
Oh, I'm fine. No, I thought I heard you say. Anything you can offer here. Hey, first of all, congratulations.
Thanks, man. That's good. Crazy times. I'm sore from sleeping on the couch. That's about all the sleep I'm getting is a couple hours here and there.
I was the guy who used to do the 3 o'clock feeding.
Man, you know, we're breastfeeding and the whole thing.
Yeah.
So I get up with her every time.
I'm sure you do.
And I do whatever I can to help. But
She'll make sure you do.
And then usually after,
Right?
after, if he needs a
My
dish,
Nobody got up with me.
My ex used to, if I'm gonna get up, your ass is getting up, basically. That's
Hell,
what you're-
not in my house.
I've been trying. We'll see.
Yeah.
It's been rough, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
It's a wonderful, this is what life's about.
I relieved her this weekend, let her go for 4 hours off.
I didn't know you had it.
Tried to manage. He gave me a rough time. It was really good on Friday. Friday, Saturday, Sunday was great. And Monday and today was good on We'll see.
I was angry I had a briefing last time. Because twice the state police said I didn't need to see. And Kate asked me